Mi nombre es Hugo Hernández. Yo, como lo comentó Gerardo hace unos minutos, yo tendré el rol de moderador por parte del equipo organizador de INEGI México. Es un placer saludarles y el día de hoy entonces tenemos una sesión bastante interesante. En la pantalla, antes de las 7, unos minutos antes de las 7, teníamos una serie de recomendaciones mismas que están en el chat para quienes no tuvieron oportunidad de ver la diapositiva, están también en el chat. Les comento que estamos grabando las sesiones y posteriormente serán cargadas ahí al sitio web del evento. Les pedimos de favor que mientras no estén participando, si nos hacen favor de cerrar los micrófonos para evitar ahí el ruido que pueda causar molestias por parte de los expositores. También a los líderes de sesión y a los ponentes, les recomendamos que vean por ahí una de las pantallas tiene el timer. Todas las sesiones tienen una duración de 15 minutos, incluyendo la sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Estamos tratando de respetar mucho estos tiempos. Entonces, la recomendación es de que ubiquen la pantalla ahí con el temporizador para que hagan un buen manejo de su tiempo. Bien, les comentaba, el día de hoy tenemos la sesión 6. El líder de sesión será Roland Storm. Son cuatro ponencias y la primera parte de la sesión 7. Hoy empezamos con tres sesiones y mañana continuaremos con la sesión 7. La sesión 7 estará a cargo de Natalia Doronzova. Ella será la líder de sesión. Entonces, sin mayor preámbulos, le doy la palabra a Roland Storm.
Good morning, everyone. We apologize for the delay. I would like to give the floor to Roland Storm, who will moderate our session today. Go ahead, Roland.
Thank you, Hugo. I didn't get all the messages that you just presented because, at least in Germany, the translation was not transmitted.
Perdón. Exactly. Sorry for that, Roland. Unfortunately, Hugo, there was not a translation to English when you were speaking in Spanish. So, as Hugo said, it was just only a friendly reminder about all the recommendations and instructions to the participants, Roland, about that. So, you have in front of you the case of the timer for controlling the time, for following up each of the presentations. But now the question is for my colleagues of the interpretation service. I don't know, this is for the interpreters, if you are working, because we experimented some problems starting when Hugo were speaking in Spanish. So, voy a hablar en español ahora. No sé si están ya escuchando
la traducción. I'll be speaking in Spanish now. Can you hear the translation?
I am now speaking in Spanish. Now? I wonder if you're listening to the translation
Just if
into
you could
English.
Write it in the chat.
Now we
yes,
are ready. We are sorry.
We apologize.
Sorry.
The floor is yours, Roland.
Okay, so no problem. Before I start with the preliminary remarks to session 6, there's a plea from the interpreters to all of us. When we are speaking, we are asked to use such a pretty thing on our head as far as possible, because to them it makes an echo. Yesterday, I didn't realize it when I was listening, but it seems to be different in the studio where the interpreters are. So please, if you have one available, please use your headsets when you're speaking. Okay, now we come to session 6. In session 6, I should read the name perhaps. Profiling and large cases units, practical aspects of reflecting multinationals correctly in the business registers. We have 4 presentations. We have 2 presentations by international organizations, and we have 2 presentations about new developments in 2 countries, Sweden and Germany. I think this is a good mixture with regard to the topic. I had the splendid opportunity yesterday in the afternoon in session 5 to give something like general ideas around my own session. Thank you, Andrew, giving me that opportunity. And as I mentioned yesterday in my presentation, I think we need a lot of international cooperation and international harmonization in order to catch globalization adequately. And on the other hand, practical experiences are made in the countries. So the two presentations from the countries show how different statistical business registers try to cope with the new units and with the new situation of globalization in their practical register work. Having said that, I would propose that we jump immediately in the first presentation, which comes from Germany, from my colleague Simon Rommelsbacher. He's one of the pillars on which German profiling is built on. And just one remark before he starts himself, be reminded the mascot of the German profiling is the elephant, not, as you might think, the ant. So Simon, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good day, and good evening to all of the members of the Wiesbaden group from Wiesbaden here. And I'm very proud that I can present you today the German integrated profiling analysis tool, the eProfund. So I will share my screen. So you can see the first slide and the icon of our profiling tool, the eProfund. It's a small elephant. And I will start to give you some informations on profiling in Germany, especially on manual profiling in Germany. For the reference year 2019, we have more than 1,500 enterprise groups in Germany manually profiled, with circa 50 profilers who works in Germany. More than 80% of these 50 persons are doing manual case processing in the statistical offices of the Länder. That's the regions of Germany. And 8 or 9 persons doing the coordination and development of methods and tools in the Federal Statistical Office in Germany. It's here in Wiesbaden in Germany. For this casework, we have 2 very important profiling tools. The eProfund I will show you today. It's the integrated profiling analysis tool for doing manual profiling in Germany. So it's national profiling. And the profiling report I will show you later. These both tools support 3 different manual profiling variants in Germany. And I will start to explain you the differences between these 3 different manual profiling variants in Germany. I want to start with the desktop profiling because it's the basis for all of the other manual profiling variants. You need both tools, standardized profiling report and the eProfund for doing desktop profiling. And in a desktop profiling, we start with a description of the enterprise group and their segments, the description and understanding of the business models of an enterprise group. And in some cases, we have to clarify the group structure to answer the question, which legal units belongs to one enterprise group. After that clarification and description and understanding, we are doing the real profiling. So the top-down delineation of autonomous enterprises with standardized check tables. So we have check tables in this profiling report, and the target of this check tables is to increase the quality, transparency, and comparability of the decisions in manual profiling, because I said to you, it's more than 1,500 groups in the last year, and a lot of different persons who are doing manual profiling. So it's very important to increase these three aspects. At the end, each legal unit in one enterprise group should assign to an enterprise and has specified a role in this enterprise. What is this legal unit doing in one enterprise? And we give an outlook for the future, because when you are looking in a website or looking in an annual report of the enterprise group, sometimes you find some information for the plans of the enterprise group. For some cases, you are not finished after the desktop profiling, because there are a lot of questions unanswered after doing desktop profiling, and it's maybe, for example, a very complex or big enterprise group, and you have some questions you want to discuss in a meeting with the enterprise group, especially with the chief financial officer of the enterprise group, or the persons from the consolidated accounting of the enterprise group. Then we will do this intensive profiling and discuss, validate, and adjust the results from desktop profiling together with the enterprise group. Which tools we are using for this intensive profiling? It's the profiling report, of course, the eProfund, and an online survey system after the meeting. In intensive profiling, we hope to increase the quality and reliability of the profiling results in Germany. It's increase the results, the quality of the results for the reference year and so on for the following years, because you get some more information from the enterprise group directly. And it's not only important for the individual case, it's also important for the profiling methodology in general, because you get some feedback from the enterprise group. And of course, it's very time consuming, but I will show you later. After our 2 test cycles, we developed a third profiling variant in Germany, a third manual profiling variant, the review of the previous profile, because the profiling results are needed annually in Germany each year. And we want to prevent unchecked annual reusing of profiling results. And we saw that the dynamic of the enterprise groups are sometimes very high in some years. For this review, for this short review, we just need the iProfund as the tool, and we don't write a profiling report. And it's a good variant to focus on minor changes in the group. So it's significantly less time consuming. So if you have major changes in the group, you should do a follow-up desktop profiling and not this short review. Let's have a look on the average time required for the 3 profiling variants. We have the short review of the previous profile with this 6 hours. Desktop profiling is the average time you need 40 hours. And for intensive profiling, we need 80 hours, so circa 2 weeks hard profiling work. Now we come to the eProfund. I want to show you the integrated profiling analysis tool we are using in Germany, and we developed in the last 5 years in Germany to support the profiling work. That's one target of this tool, to simplify data work, because we are looking on the big and complex enterprise groups on manual profiling in Germany. There should be a suitable documentation, and to give the 50 people who are working for the topic in Germany a clear and simple structure how they should work and how they standardized work. But there's a second very important target of the eProfund and the other tool, the profiling report. These both tools should produce at the end a good presentation of the results, of the profiling results. So there's a high transparency of the decisions that are made in manual profiling. And there are a lot of decisions we made every day in profiling. So it's very important to focus on the important and essential decisions made in profiling. Now I want to show you the architecture of the eProfund, because I very like this tool, but it's not the important tool, because the important tool is the business register, the central database we have in Germany. And this is on the top. It's in German short URS for business register. It's the central database. And from this database, we export the data to the eProfund. It's a short way in the SAS tool, but it's not important for you to understand. In the eProfund, you're doing the real profiling work, technically profiling work. You import the list of subsidiaries from the annual report. You're writing beside of the eProfund the profiling report. And if you are doing intensive profiling, you have interfaces to our online survey system. And if you finish, it's very important that all the information and the results are going back to the central business register database. Now we have a look more deeper in this tool, because we have a modularization of the eProfund. And the first module is the group editing. Enterprise editing is the second module. Then we have the display of results. It's for the profiler themselves and for the users. And we have a lot of interfaces to play back the results to the business register database. And we have a cockpit. It's very important for the quality of the work. Now I will show you the modules. First, the module group editing. I forget to say this. It's an Excel tool programmed in Visual Basic. So maybe you can see it's made in Excel, but there are a lot of functions supported. Are supporting the profilers, and this function are programmed in Visual Basic. So first, we have some information for the group. So for example, the name of the group, the global group head, the global decision center, the German decision center. We have the profiling history for this enterprise group, and we have the most important informations from the annual report or more than one annual report of this enterprise group. That's the first sheet in Excel for the eProfund. The second sheet is matching between the list of subsidiaries and the legal units in our business register in Germany. We have to, for this enterprise group, and we match this both lists and support this automatically with this tool. So more than 90% of these legal units are the same in a normal profiling case. So just for a few legal units, we have to clear the structure or if they are belonging to this enterprise group. So that's very helpful for the profilers, because some groups have more than 100 or 500 legal units, and it's a lot of work. Then we have the profiling work, the enterprise editing. The profilers should identify enterprises in the enterprise group and assign all legal units to one enterprise. So you see in the orange line enterprises, and there are then more than one legal units belonging to the first enterprise, for example. So here I choose a very small enterprise group that is easier for you to see this. and a lot of groups are much bigger in Germany. At the right side, there are some opportunities to document the decisions. So some arguments why this single legal unit belongs to the enterprise. And there is the possibility to give the role of the legal unit, what this legal unit is doing in this enterprise. What is the task of this legal unit?
2 Minuten, Herr Rummelsbacher.
Thank you. I will come to the display of results. So the profiling work is finished, and it's proof for the profilers, you can see here, to have a look on this results. We have a tree on the right side. That's the group structure, and in the color you see the different enterprises, so the decisions the profiler made. It's also for the users of the profiling results. Then if you checked your profiling work, you can use the interfaces to the business register database to import the results into the business register. And in the business register then are important information for enterprise groups, enterprises, and legal units. And you also have a cockpit. There are some checks and yellow and red and green colors. But I will come to the last slide, my outlook. In my opinion, the separation between group editing and enterprise editing becomes more important in the next years. So we have in this eProfund the possibility to split between group editing and enterprise editing. So we can do quality improvement of the information on enterprise groups for more groups than the profiling work. And that should have a positive impact for the Bratislava conclusions on DGENS 2019. And I think it's conceivable for the future that we could build interfaces from the eProfund to the EGR, the Europe Group Register, and the interactive profiling tool from Eurostat. Maybe we can hear this in the next presentation. And for the discussion, I have some questions for you. First question, do you have similar profiling tools or plan to create such? Maybe then we can develop ideas together. And I think it's very important that we establish more international standards in profiling. I saw this in the chat yesterday from Tammy from Canada, this aspect. And I think that's really important. Maybe we can discuss this later or get in touch after the Wiesbaden group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon Rummelsbacher, for this presentation. And to the audience, please keep your questions and remarks in mind or note them down in the chat. And already make up your mind how much you would be ready to pay for this instrument if you want to buy it. But before we come to that, we switch to the next presentation, which comes from the Statistical Office of the European Union, Eurostat. And the speaker, if I'm right, is Enrica Morganti, but it's a presentation prepared on the paper prepared by Enrica Morganti and Tatiana Ryadlianova. And I ask you to share your screen and start with your presentation.
Thank you, Roland. It will be me who gives the presentation. So Tatiana from Eurostat.
Sorry for this misunderstanding.
No problem. I hope I can do it as good as Enrica. I will just share my screen. And I try to. Can you see the screen? Okay, very good.
Perfect.
So in my presentation, I will briefly outline the main activities that are going on in the European statistical system. as regards recording the data on the multinational enterprise groups, and also I will briefly explain the systematic approach to record M&Es in business registers. So due also to the lack of time, I will focus mainly on the different ES activities that are addressing economic globalization. So large cases unit and similar organizational structures. Then I will also shortly introduce the Eurogroups register, European profiling program, early warning system, and finally the European network of multinational enterprise groups coordinators, aka MNEnet, will be also explained what its main objectives are. So as a first part or first item, I will briefly explain what large cases units are or the similar organizational structure. So large cases units are basically a network of experts within the national statistical system that ensure that the data are collected across different statistical domains from the largest and most complex M&E groups in a coordinated way. The data should be also consistent, as well as consistently presented in the disseminated statistics. What are the potential key activities of such a large cases unit or similar organizational structure? One of the areas is to build up relation with the largest M&E groups. So this team of experts develops and maintains the communication with the top M&E groups. They have very good capacity and knowledge to translate the business accounting information into statistical figures, and they are also very good or should be able to coordinate different surveys that are run by different departments with one M&E group. So they can avoid that statistical office asks multiple times the same question one M&E group. So the next area, which is also very important, is the data collection. In some countries, the large cases unit is mainly responsible for data collection. So they choose the most appropriate data sources. Furthermore, they also check whether there are some better administrative data sources or even a web scraping. And last but not least, they also, again, can coordinate the questionnaires across different domains. Oops. Another activity that can be done within the LCU team is the validation of different statistical and administrative data within and across different statistical domains. So they can also quantify the inconsistencies or asymmetries and try to really produce consistent data. In some countries, the profiling activities are also covered by the LCU team. It depends also on the country. And there are some other tasks that could be also done within an LCU unit. Each European country has a kind of tailor-made activities, and they are adjusted to the national statistical system. In some countries, there is also the early warning system integrated within this team, which is kind of alerting in case that multinational enterprise group is restructuring. I will explain it later. So the Eurogroups register is very important infrastructural tool. It is the statistical register of the multinational enterprise groups, and it was established by Eurostat in collaboration with European member states and EFTA countries. So the Eurogroup's register database receives input, microdata from the national business registers of EU member states and EFTA countries. And for the data outside the EU, the commercial data providers deliver the data. What is the value added of the EGR compared to the national business registers? So the ultimate value added is that it can provide the complete structure of the M&E groups, while the national business registers, we can see often only the truncated view. So basically what the M&E is doing nationally in each of the countries. The statistical purposes of running the EGR database is to provide consistent and timely information on M&E groups to the European statistical system, including the identification of their constituent legal units. Another important objective is to serve as an authoritative data source and coordinated survey frames for the top M&E groups, as well as to serve as a supplementary data source and survey frame for the other M&E groups. The national SBRS should be also consistently updated together with EGRs on M&E groups. Two more important aspects of the Eurogroup's register is also to serve as a central data source for querying M&E groups and their constituting units for multiple statistical purposes. And this includes also profiling, large cases units, the early warning system on major restructurings, and M&E analysis. Last but not least, it also enables to provide consistent data of extra EU units belonging to European M&E groups. Another part of the systematic approach to capture correctly M&E groups in business statistics and in business register is also the European profiling program. European profiling is a collaborative activity. It's carried out within the European statistical system by teams of profilers who work on the same M&E groups from different national statistical offices. So the main objective is to improve the consistency and quality of the top and most statistically significant M&E groups, their statistical units, and main economic characteristics. Currently, there is the European profiling program running. It started in 2021, and it will run for a 3-year period, concentrating efforts and resources on a prioritized set of top M&E groups. So the Pareto Rule is applied when selecting the M&E groups that should be further investigated. It says that in any process, 80% of the quality issues are caused by 20% major elements, and they are often referred to as the vital few. And following this Pareto Rule, also in this European profiling program, we focus on 20% or even less largest M&E groups, which can resolve then 80% of the quality issues in the data. The main objective is that every year the selected M&E groups will be completely profiled by all countries where these M&E groups have affiliates. While relationships with the M&E groups are planned, maintained and organized nationally by units such as the LCUs, EU profiling provides an organization to contact the global decision center of the group. So this is very important that it can establish the contact with the GTC. Next aspect is the early warning system. Despite the name system, I would call it maybe rather procedure. So it is a structured, non-legislative procedure. So it is not obligatory. And it's based on the cooperation between European national data compilers and Eurostat concerning restructuring events of the M&E groups. What do we understand as a restructuring case? So either it can be the change of the control structure or distribution of a multinational enterprise group business model across countries, but it could be also a cross-border merger or acquisition, which would affect at least 2 member states. The early warning system procedure enables to discover restructuring cases as early as possible without delays. And it enables to inform the directly concerned authorities within the EU member states and EFTA countries as soon as possible. It also ensures that there would be consistent treatment of the restructuring cases. So all the countries concerned communicate together and they agree on a common methodological treatment. So in case of restructuring of an M&E, the data would be then recorded in a consistent and harmonized way in all affected countries. The EVS also helps to agree on a coordinated timing of the publication of first results and potential revisions. And it ensures timely, harmonized, and interlinked communication towards users of national and European economic statistics.
2 minutes.
I have last 2 slides. So M&E-Net, as mentioned, is the European network of the multinational enterprise groups coordinators, and it has been established this year. There was a meeting in June where all participants took place, and its main objective is to contribute to the improved quality and consistency of the business and macroeconomic statistics. And it strengthened the cooperation and communication of the M&E experts by creating a network where the M&E related methodology, experiences, and knowledge can be shared. And the M&E-Net also exchanges information on the existing M&E related tools and processes, as mentioned before, the Eurogroups register, IPT or early warning system. So if there are some new functionalities to be developed or there are some new updates, this is the right forum to discuss it and to keep people updated between each other. Also, the national experiences and best practices as regards setting up a large cases unit or similar organizational structures can be exchanged and built up upon within this M&E-Net. For more questions, in case we don't manage to reply today, you can contact me or my colleague Enrica Morganti. And there are also some information on Eurostat web page. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatjana. Thank you also for keeping the time. So now we're back in the audience and we got 10 or 12 minutes for discussion and comments and remarks. And I see already one hand is raised. Olivier, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I don't have headset. I'm Olivier Aguerre from the French Institute of Statistics. Thank you very much for these presentations. I have a question about the first one. The method and the tools built in Germany is very interesting for us. In France, we have quite similar methods. However, we want to make progress in some topics that you have developed. We have an intensive profiling method close to yours, but we have difficulty profiling certain large groups that don't want to collaborate, also because of the lack of resources for intensive profiling. So I have several questions in this regard. Firstly, how many groups do you profile with the intensive methods? Secondly, how many groups do you divide into enterprises from the 1,500 ones? What percentage, what part? And thirdly, from the desk profiling, how do you manage to divide the groups into enterprises? How kind of document do you use? What variables? What techniques that respect the autonomy criteria as you point out? Thank you.
Antworten Sie, Herr Romsbacher, direkt?
Yeah. Could you repeat the second question for me shortly? Sorry.
No problem. The secondly is how many groups do you divide into enterprises from the 1,500 ones? For all the groups that you have, how many? What percentage? What part of groups do you divide
in
into
more than
enterprises?
One, in more than one enterprise.
Yeah, more than one. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Then I start with this question. I don't know exactly. I think we can do an analysis to answer this question after the meeting. I would say it's more than 80% of the groups are divided in more than one enterprise, but it's now just it's not we didn't count this. But I can do this for you and answer after the meeting. The first question was how many intensive profiling we did. So before COVID-19, we have done circa 40 intensive profiling. So 40 meetings with enterprise groups in Germany. Then we did a break the last 1.5 years, and now we start again with intensive profiling in the next few weeks. And the third question was about the methodology we are using in Germany. So we took the methodology from European profiling, from the SNET in Europe, and wrote a methodology for the identification of enterprises in Germany for in national profiling. And I think it's very close to your methodology in France. So maybe Roland Sturm.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I see we have an extensive chat on the issue as well, and I don't think we have to pick up everything from the chat, but we would have a reservoir of questions and topics. But another view to the audience. Are there any other people? Hands raised. I cannot see somebody, anybody. But Enrica. from Eurostat.
Can you hear me? Okay. I have a question, of course, for Simon. And thank you for the presentation. I'm very happy to see the progress made by the studies in this field. It's very important also at European level, of course, because it's a relevant factor. And my question would be, in developing this tool, because the final purpose for Eurostat would be to have something that can be reused and shared across countries, and possibly as less tools as possible for the users, not to repeat the same job in different places, of course. So in developing this tool, it would be interesting to learn from your experience, what do you think Eurostat could complement to this kind of activity, and what kind of things are, according to your opinion, overlapping and could be more efficiently organized and done in the future? This would be very important at European level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this question, Enrica. I think Eurostat and the other countries in Europe can learn and took something of the EPRO fund, yes, but the EPRO fund at first is a tool for national profiling, but the modularization of this tool, so that you can split group editing and enterprise editing, I think it's one aspect we can also do in the IPT, for example, we are using for European profiling. And so on. Of course, that's the reason why I wrote the question on my last slide. I'm very interested to get in contact with other countries to compare.
There was someone in the line.
Yeah, now you can hear me. Okay, I will go on. Yeah, I think it's very. It would be very interesting to share this tool with other countries and to compare with the profiling process with other countries, because how we developed this tool was to look on the profiling process of manual national profiling in Germany. So what are the steps to do this? And oriented on these steps, we built this tool and this modules in this tool. So I see the opportunity to do this together with more than one country in Europe, yes, and also with other countries, of course.
Thank you for these answers. I hope this system brings all the hands up on the first page of the pictures. I don't see any more. Hugo, I guess we could afford for one more question. Then I would like to raise a question to Tatjana and Enrica. It was a very nice presentation of all the activities that are carried out and coordinated by Eurostat with the member states. And I would be interested in if you could say some words about how these modules or elements to capture globalization are interacting and coordinated themselves with each other within Eurostat.
Can I answer, Enrica, or you want? Okay. So we cooperate and communicate within Eurostat as regards these activities. So in the coming weeks, we are also considering how to better integrate the early warning system together with the MNEnet. But basically, the communication between individual tools or processes exists. So we exchange regular information also on the oncoming changes or improvements and developments. And whenever there is an opportunity, we will also then share it via the MNEnet to all the coordinators, national coordinators on the MNEs. So this is my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we have an intervention from Hugo, from our host. Hugo,
Sí,
please go ahead.
Sí, gracias. ¿Me escuchan?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Gracias.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias por estas primeras dos presentaciones de
Thank you so much for these first two presentations. I think I would add what was said yesterday regarding the discussion or these international work groups that have to be promoted within the Wiesbaden group in order to move forward on the issue of defining statistical units in terms of big data. And I think that profiling would also be an important topic to cover in order to create cooperation between countries and move forward with these topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugo. This was more like a comment, and it goes along with a comment I got yesterday after my presentation from Tammy Hochstein from Canada, I guess. So thank you for that. I would suggest then we move to the next two presentations, and I call on the stage the presentation from Sweden by Kaiser Bergman, Christian Ekström, and Richard Nilsson. And if I'm well informed, Kaiser will be the presenter.
Yes, hi there, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Do you see the presentation?
Yes, we see it well.
Okay. Okay. My name is Kajsa Bergman, and I work at the Large Cases Unit in Statistics Sweden. And together with me today, there is also Richard Nilsson and Christian Ekström, who both work in the Business Register, and we have done this presentation together, but I'm going to do it. I'm not going to put my video on because I'm a bit worried about the streaming capacity, because I had some problems with the audio, so I don't dare to do that. So, profiling at Statistics Sweden. This picture here is our head office in Örebro, by the way. We have an ongoing project, coordinated economic statistics with new statistical units. But of course, they aren't new enterprises and cows, but we have intensified the profiling work during recent years. And a large part of this project is profiling. As it is, the Swedish Business Register already contains statistical units, enterprise, and kind of activity units, but only to a very limited extent. And by that, I mean that we don't have that many complex enterprises consisting of more than one legal unit in our business register today, but this will change shortly. Well, it is the Large Cases Unit where I work that is responsible for the profiling activities. We are about 10 persons that work with profiling, but no one of us works full-time, so it's not 10 full-time equivalents. We have adopted 3 profiling methods. First of all, manual profiling for the large and complex group, semi-manual profiling for the medium-sized, a bit less complex groups, and automatic profiling for the non-complex groups. And here's a picture about the procedure. We automatically create the population and do the automatic profiling for all groups to start with, and also identify candidates for kind of activity units. And then it's a control system that controls the structures and compares with the current units that we have now. And there are complexity calculations done there, which decides which one should be manual profiled, and with validation we mean the semi-profiled process. And then we also pinpoint which legal units in every enterprise should be the reporting unit. We implement the results after that. We have just now completed the second year of full profiling. We did some tests, started 2017, but now we completed the second year. And the results so far is only used in the Structured Business Statistics survey. But as from reference year 2022, all surveys that uses ENT and most surveys that uses COW will use these new statistical units, which is that the whole population of business groups will be profiled in one or another way. There is about 60,000 groups in the Swedish business register. Most of them, of course, the vast majority of them will be automatically profiled, of course, because they aren't that complex. And then we have done about 180 manually and 470 semi-manual. I will talk about a bit about the experience gained so far during the profiling work. We have this question about autonomy, because the theoretical definition of the concept is clear, quite clear, but in practical terms it is not very clear, and it can be subject to different interpret. I can't say that, but it can be subjectively done. We use a top-down approach when we do our profiling, and we have found that it works quite well for the traditional, often manufacturing business groups that we have a lot of in Sweden, cars and steel and those kind of things. But not that well, always anyway, for groups active in the service sector, like large media groups, for example, or other kind of service sector groups, because they have a lot of legal units and they have a very diversified activities. Investment groups are another issue, because their whole business idea is to acquire other companies or groups, should they be delineated in the same enterprise if they belong to the same segment, even if they have nothing in common except for common members of their boards, or should we view them as independent parts within the segment? And we have landed in the latter approach, as independent parts within the segment if they have nothing to do with each other, even if they belong to the same segment or division. So we have had lots of discussions about this, and also discussion with our Nordic neighbors in a meeting, and at working group meetings, at SPS working groups meetings. But I think we will often end up with conflicting operational rules, how to delineate an end according to autonomy. Then we have the issue about head offices, where we in Sweden, we can assign a code to legal units with ancillary activities. Head offices of domestically controlled groups are coded as ancillary units as it is today, and has been done so for probably 20 years or so. But we have learned that the most common practice within the European Union, other countries, is to view the head offices autonomous and thus regard them as enterprises in their own right. But our view has always been that head offices only exist because of the production in their subsidiaries, and thus should be considered as an ancillary. Because it's no use to have a head office if you don't have a some production. You don't create a head office and then create a production. So it's usually the other way around. We have not found clear guidelines in the manual for European business profiling. We actually found conflicting guidelines there. And this issue has been discussed on at least 2 SPS meetings where I have been in attendance, and I don't think it's solved yet, because it's vital that it is solved, since the countries must harmonize the profiling practices as much as possible. We also have I would say this is a quite a large problem actually, because we find that there is no interest at all from the companies when we try to contact them about these issues. So the majority of groups that we profiled so far, we have actually carried out desk profiling. We used the public information in annual reports on websites and information from our different surveys. The few contacts we've had with the very large Swedish groups is not very encouraging, and in some cases they've told us they won't deliver any kind of data that they aren't legally obliged to deliver. And in some cases we have got a limited extent of information. And we think it's a problem that it's currently no legislation to make these groups cooperate. And this is unfortunate because we need their help to assess if we have the right picture of the group and for them to provide information about internal flows and about their companies abroad and things like that. But we don't get very much help, unfortunately. Other experience gained, we have reconsidered our strategy for medium-sized groups. We will transfer the ones with simpler group structure to automatic profiling, and we will do the rest manually because we discovered after a while that we did them manually anyway. We had an idea from the beginning that we could do them a bit quicker, but that was not the case. And another problem is that the annual reports that we rely on are published later and later. And a good thing is that we have participated in several European profiling projects led by Eurostat together with other European countries. And this is very positive experience because since most groups are multinational, it is important that we work together with our colleagues in other European countries and in other countries as well, of course. Effects on data collection. Most of the admin data used in SBS and other surveys applies to legal units. Of course, most companies only have the required data on legal unit level. We will therefore continue to collect data on legal unit level and do necessary consolidations ourselves. We will eliminate internal flows between legal units in an end. And we have, for that purpose, developed methods for consolidation for non-additive variables in SBS that we will apply. Other effects. Well, the production systems need to be changed somewhat. The way we work will change. We will do validation both of data on both legal unit and enterprise level, and kind of activity level in some cases. The overall workload will increase, I would say, since profiling and consolidation activities are time-consuming. And initially, an extensive task of introducing all new statistical units into the business register, as we will do early next year. But we hope the continuous work may not be that much more extensive. We just hope for that. Conclusions. Well, profiling is an ongoing process. We are regularly revising and revisiting the operational rules, tools, and the work processes as we gain new experiences. As I said before, it is a time-consuming task, which makes it essential to do the work as efficiently as possible. And we still have difficult issues that need to be dealt with, for example, the concept of autonomy. And we would like to stress also that since most of the large group are multinational, we need to work together internationally in order to agree on best practices so the statistics will be comparable. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Kaiser, and thank you also for keeping the time more than perfectly, saving us 2 minutes. Again, to the audience, I would invite you to note your questions already in the chat or down on the paper so we can move to our fourth contribution, which comes again from international organization, this time from the UNSD and from the OECD. And we have 2 presenters, if I'm correctly informed, Nancy Snyder from the UNSD and Rodolfo Ostolazo from OECD. Please go ahead.
Yes, hello, thank you. I'm Nancy from the United Nations Statistics Division. And yes, we will be sharing our presentation with Rodolfo Estalaza from OECD. Let me see. Having some trouble sharing my screen. I was wondering if maybe someone from INEGI could help me with that. Or Rodolfo, maybe you can share your.
Could we have the backup presentation from Mexico, please?
Sorry about that.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, so yeah, we'll get on with the next slide, I guess, just to show the outline of the presentation. We're going to be giving you some updates on two products that both UNSD and OECD have developed on multinational enterprise group registers. The UNSD's project is the Global Group Register, or GGR, and OECD's product is ADIMA, that most of you are probably familiar with. And then we are going to discuss some ideas we have for collaborating amongst the two organizations on a new joint GGR ADIMA product. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just some background about how the Global Group Register came about. Back in 2015, the UN Statistical Commission established the UN Expert Group on International Trade and Economic Globalization Statistics. And their mandate was to address several measurement challenges emerging from globalization. And one of the things they identified that would be useful in helping NSOs analyze globalization was the creation of a global enterprise group register, similar to the idea of the Eurogroups Register project. And so at that time, the idea was to build upon their experiences with the EGR and take into account the lessons learned from that project. The only difference, or main difference, I would say, is that the EGR does receive national SBR microdata from EU member states, and this Global Groups project is based entirely on publicly available information. Next slide, please. Right, so the aim of the Global Group Register and any international multinational enterprise group register is really to help statistical offices see the non-national part of the MNEs in their country, so the subsidiaries and affiliates abroad, and also the other way around, to help statistical offices see the national part of a foreign-owned MNE. We also see this product as facilitating data sharing among countries, hopefully, because you can use this global register as a common public data source that you can both refer to companies by name and an ID number. And ultimately, this will help to analyze globalization and global value chains, help in compiling foreign affiliate trade statistics, etc. Next slide, please. So one of the updates on the GGR is that we did release our first experimental release December last year. Could we move to the next slide, please? And then no, next slide, please. Thank you. So here's a snapshot of the UNSD website with the URL where this first experimental version of the GGR is available for download in Excel, very easy, user-friendly to use right now. It's open source. We also have a user guide with methodology, our data sources, description, and a terminology to define all the terms we've used in the GGR. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Sorry. So what's in the GGR? Because this is our first experimental release, it was more of a proof of concept to show that we could do such a project based on publicly available information within our team. So we focused on a smaller subset, a top group of M&E groups. We ended up doing 135 last year, and that entails about 40,000 total companies, including all of their affiliates and subsidiaries worldwide. Up here in the right corner, I just have some summary statistics that might be of interest. On average, there's about 300 affiliates per M&E that we profiled. And the USA has the most affiliates. And on average, M&E groups have unique presence in about 34 unique countries on average. So the GGR does outline the legal structure of the entire M&E group worldwide. We do include exact control percentages, ownership control, as well as percentage interest if we have both sets of information. We usually get that from the annual report. And then we do have a hierarchy of the M&E groups, almost like a family tree with the direct and ultimate parents identified, which can be used in profiling. I mentioned it's built exclusively on publicly available information and thus avoids confidentiality constraints. We do plan to expand the coverage beyond the top 135. We're working on that currently. And we would like to have the data validated by countries as much as possible. We'll discuss that a little later on. And we are continuously searching for new sources of information and new ways to connect to country information. Next slide, please. I also wanted to update you all on some IT tools that we're developing in parallel. We are developing a graph database on the UN global platform. Currently, it's an open source version of OrientDB. We went with a graph database because we found that it was much better at storing and analyzing relationship data, which is what we really wanted to focus on with the GGR. We're also working on a dashboard to allow users to visualize and easily query and extract the data. Also, this is a very labor-intensive process, as you can imagine, a lot of copying and pasting from PDF files, web scraping involved. So we have developed some robotic process automation tools, or RPA tools, to automate the profiling process as much as possible, but this is sort of an ongoing endeavor to further automate it. And we're using it for the first time this year, so we'll see. It is helping us so far in facilitating the process. Next slide, please. So these are a series of some preliminary visualizations that our team has been playing around with. There's many different ways to visualize the data. Here, this one kind of looks like a family tree structure. If you imagine the M&E group head up there in the top left, and then these are the direct subsidiaries, and then their subsidiaries and affiliates. Next slide, please. You could also imagine it this way. There's this concentric circle idea, and then the lines here would represent different types of relationships. And next slide, please. And you can imagine the graphs can get quite complex, and you can assign different colors to different types of companies based on their industry or their country, even the data source. So we're trying to play around with the best visualization that's user-friendly, but also very informative. And at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Rodolfo for an update on OECD's product, EDIMA. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nancy, and thank you very much to all of you. Yes, we are going to present you a little bit of an update of what is EDIMA. And here's the thing, why do we want to measure multinational enterprises? Well, the revenues of the largest 100 M&Es are higher than the total output of the second largest OECD economy. So that's important. Or for example, Walmart's revenues worldwide are comparable to those of Finland. There's clearly an asymmetry in the knowledge of Walmart in comparison to the Finnish economy. Next one, please, Raul. What is EDIMA? Well, it's a sort of global group register, but it's called EDIMA, sort of speak. It has the 500 largest multinational enterprises based on market capitalization. It's international in coverage, and it's not bounded by jurisdiction. It's based on open source. It can be shared without limitation, without compromising data confidentiality, because all the information comes from open sources. It reflects new business dynamics because it includes a lot of digital measures as part of the core of the database. We are ready to collaborate. We invite you to include the country-level data sources. We are already doing that with some of you, and we are looking to make the system allow the users to edit data in some of our live register. The caveat on that is that we are limited only to publicly available data. Some data points are unavailable, and we cannot ensure full coverage. Next one, please, Raul. A little bit online with what Nancy has said here is the connections that you have between the different firms, how many identifiers you have, how many companies, how many websites, and each dot it's an identifier of the M&E and its affiliates, and the different colors of different sources, and the relationships are the connecting lines. So you can see that Apple looks a little bit more dispersed than Total SA. So we should expect this according to the type of products that each one of these is offering to the market. Next one, please, Raul. This is just how does Microsoft Corporation looks according to ADIMA. It says that in the physical register, we have 80 affiliates in 45 countries, but in the digital register, we have 172 associated websites in 41 countries. And we have also measures of web page importance. We have indicators. We know that Microsoft is present in 61 countries. So this helps us to measure the internationalization of each one of the firms. And in 2019, the monitor that we have analyzed 7,300 headline analysis. Next one, please. Here are some extensions that we have done with ADIMA. Particularly, we compare Google Trends patterns per M&E to see the impact of COVID. And here you can see that Apple, the dashed line is 2019 and 2020. You know, the COVID thing, we have an increase compared with the baseline scenario. And you can see on booking holdings, mainly related to travel, you can see a really big dip here, and they have not achieved the same level as in 2019. Next slide, please. We also have done an extension on gender diversity. We use the data from PermID to individuals linked to companies to develop some insights into gender, and we can tell you that the percentage of female board members it's quite limited, even in large multinationals, right? Independent firms 20%, the total of firms 16, and in seniors, independent positions total and senior leadership, it's quite low still. So there's still a gap there. Next one, please. Then we have also done some geospatial things, particularly this map that we're seeing right now. It shows the dispersion of the retail units for Tesco and Carrefour, these are retailers, and they operate in 30 and 17 countries, but they only compete in Poland, which is quite an interesting insight that we have seen on these thanks to ADIMA. Next one, please. We are encouraging, next one, please. We are encouraging not only countries, but firms to validate what we have found in ADIMA. For example, INEGI has analyzed the main characteristics of the affiliates of M&Es located in Mexico, according to ADIMA, and they validate ADIMA and updated the National Business Register accordingly, using the NUI, the public face of SBR, to locate the M&Es affiliates according to ADIMA, because we want to know if both products reflect the same economic units. And it was possible for INEGI to verify 92% of M&Es in ADIMA and 68% of the affiliates. With using data similarity tools, we have done collaborated with different public sources like the New Zealand Business Register, India, Norway, Great Britain, Finland, and Brazil, among others. And we invite other countries to work with us in this task. Next one, please.
Rodolfo, 2 minutes, please.
I knew it. Sorry about that. This is a little comparison between the Global Group Register and ADIMA. I will not go into more detail. We are releasing ADIMA by November this year for the financial year 2020 to see the impact of COVID. And we hope to have a new online interface to visualize the data interactively. Next one, please. And I turn the floor to Nancy. Thank you very much, Roland.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll try to wrap up quickly here. If you go to the next slide. So just a quick recap, we've kind of gone over this, but The two products are very similar in scope and intent, and they use a lot of the same data sources, which are annual reports and financial filings, the G20 Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation, or GLIFE. They both could be used for profiling. They are comparable so far in terms of coverage, which is great based on our initial assessment. There are some differences. We have some different variables that the two products capture. The GGR has the detailed ownership percentages, for instance. We identify non-controlled affiliates, but ADEMA also has other variables as well. They have the digital register outlining all of the websites of an M&E. They also monitor events, as Rodolfo was mentioning, and can be used to analyze current events like COVID and economic impacts. And it has a larger scope. They've been doing this longer than we have, and they have 500 plus M&Es. Next slide, please. So we're very happy that OECD and UNSC are able now to collaborate on a joint product. Next slide, please, Raul. And we do see some of the lessons we've learned is that it's very resource intensive. So we really want to combine our efforts to be able to do the profiling as efficiently as possible. We want to focus on a core set of variables that we can reliably collect in a timely fashion, but that are also key to users. Of course, country of location, address, relation to M&E group head are the vital ones. Other relevant variables that we have considered collecting are employment, revenues, more detailed addresses, digital presence, etc. And we do have the UN Committee of Experts on Business and Trade Statistics, which is also providing guidance and oversight of this project. And so countries through that committee can provide input and have been providing input actually on the selection of the key variables. Next slide. And we really believe that the benefits of this collaboration is we want to be able to provide a consistent picture of the M&Es globally. We have these two products, and it would be great to have one consistent picture so that there's absolutely no conflicting information, so it can be used by NSOs. Also, it'll raise the quality and confidence in using the joint product if we minimize this, the duplication or conflicting information. Also, we can share resources to automate the process and even do extensions more rapidly. So what does, next slide actually, please. And then what does the collaboration actually look like? We've started the initial stages of this. Some of the easier ones are identifying the same list of M&E group heads to have the same population, which we can do. We just need to decide if we want to determine it by revenues or market cap or another indicator. Agree on the scope, whether we include all enterprises, non-controlled, state-owned enterprises, branches even, and agree on the scope in terms of variables. Like I mentioned, we do have a slightly different coverage in the two separate products now, so we would like to pick the key variables that we're going to do jointly, continue the search for new data sources, and share resources to collect and validate the data. And also, we would like to develop a common system to facilitate data validation by NSOs directly. And next slide, please. And so the way forward, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit over time, but I would just want to stress that we do see this as a global public good, and we are relying on the countries to work with us and to collaborate, not only in terms of identifying variables that would be of use to you, but also maybe data visualizations or other tools that would help you in your profiling or to check your data and your SDRs. And it would be wonderful if we could get more active participation from countries to maintain the new joint global register and to help us validate the data. And please, you're all welcome to express your interest in participating and collaborating with us on this project moving forward. Thank you. That was it. And thank you, Nehi, for sharing their presentation on your screen.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Rodolfo, for the presentation. I see we have about 10 minutes left now for questions and discussions. Hugo, you agree? And I look to the audience. I cannot see any hands raised so far. Ah, yes, Hugo, go ahead, please.
It's Gerardo, Roland, no problem.
Sorry, Gerardo.
Thank you for that, Roland. Thank you, Nancy and Rodolfo, for this nice presentation. Definitely, we are interested to participate. As Rodolfo pointed out, INEGI was working very closely with OECD, especially in the validation of the information that OECD is providing through ADIMA. So with this idea, definitely is necessary also review the possibility of this validation. For example, in the case of Mexico, we have the advantage of this National Directory of Economic Units, DENUE, as Rodolfo pointed out. So the DENUE also brings to us the possibility to analyze the regional perspective. For example, because we have now the information of establishments in the case of DENUE, so we can identify the regional impact at subnational level here in Mexico of the multinational enterprises. So we are connecting now this special interest that we have at the subnational level with the connection with the validation of ADIMA, and also with this idea to participate in the validation of the global group register in this joint cooperation with the UNSD. So this is my comment. Thank you for the opportunity, Roland.
Thank you, Gerardo, for the comment. And then I have two hands raised. Oh, now we're dominated by the international organizations. First would be Enrica, please, from Eurostat.
Yes, indeed, dominated. So I just wanted to say something about the collaboration and the possibility to validate the data. So last year with the Global Group Register, we worked a lot from the Euro Group Register to validate two large groups, Walmart and Snack. And we did really a big job that lasted a couple of weeks in really going into all the nitty-gritty of the individual data. But unfortunately, in the end, we are not in a position as Eurostat to share the results, because whatever results we share, we just disclosure the confidential data which are in the EGR. So this is a little bit our limitation at the moment. When we really speak about concrete actions on the validation. Otherwise, from our side, we are, of course, very much interested and willing to do any kind of collaboration. And a great job, congratulations. I mean, the numbers are really small compared to the EGR, but I'm sure they will grow.
Thank you, Enrica. This was some kind of comment as well, yes. And then I would like to call Ilaria from the UNSD.
Thank you, and sorry for dominating the floor from international organization, but I wanted to highlight a little bit some aspects of this type of work. One, the importance, I think, going forward of having some element of the business register disseminated, because I think if they are available, of course, the non-confidential information, if it's available online, it is possible to build this global register maybe in a more direct way and automated way. So I think because of some of the business registers, the one that DENUE are publicly available online, it's easier to pull out the information and check, validate the information. The second aspect is that I'm glad that Enrica mentioned it, that it's also very important that the information is consistent with the EGR. These are, the EGR is a very regional register. We try to develop the global register. Of course, it's less detailed probably than the EGR, but we will have to find a way in which maybe we can guarantee a consistency, at least at broad level, because there is a confidentiality constraint on the EGR, but at least that we provide correct link with the detailed structure within Europe. And also I wanted to highlight, sorry, Roland, and I will be quiet very soon, the importance of these identifiers, unique identifiers at national level for many developing countries are key to use administrative data to link different data sources, but are at the same time are key at the global level. And for example, we use very much the glyph data that have this global legal identifier, and it's a great way to link the information globally from the various company. And in this regard, maybe we'll at the next Wiesbaden group meeting we'll share more development on how we can also take advantage of the infrastructure already in place from glyph to set up maybe a mechanism in which we can help countries strengthen their national unique identifiers and increase also the use of this global identifier. But we will come back to the group and share advances with you. But thank you. Sorry, now I'll stop.
Okay, thank you very much. You know, you always get me when you point out the importance of identifiers. So I have two more raised hands, and I ask you to be short if you can. First of all, Andrew Allen from the UK.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you both. It was really good to see the two international organisations working together on this project. And I think it is a great development, and I'll obviously be happy to collaborate on and do some quality assurance from a UK perspective. I had two sort of smaller questions. One was, where did the OECD get the what appears to be local unit information for Tesco's from? So have they web scraped that, and is that going to be part of this? And my other question is, the rest of the presentations we've had in this session really have been about moving from legal unit to enterprise. This approach is really a legal unit approach. Will you be able to convert some of those legal units into enterprises? Is there any ambition to do that in the future? Thank you.
Quick answers, please.
Rodolfo, you can go ahead on the Tesco question if you like.
Sorry, Graham, can you please take that question?
Just to introduce myself, my name's Graham Pilgrim. I'm the developer behind Edema. So to answer the Tesco question, this isn't necessarily local unit data. What we've done is we've combined this with data from a project called OpenStreetMap. And this gives us basically the individual location of all of these Tesco outlets. It also includes a couple of other, I believe, Tesco took over a company called Booker as well, or something like that. So there's also Booker included in there as well. So that's kind of how we've got that geospatial sort of element on there. We are looking to sort of other enhancements in the future, so looking to add in sort of more geospatial level from media analysis and things like this. But as for knowing the exact legal local unit, we haven't quite got access to that information. And then, yeah, agree with you. I mean, our approach has been a little bit different, maybe starting from that top level and then working our way down. But I think that's mainly as a result of some of the limitations that we come across. I mean, I think it's been well mentioned that we're really reliant on what is made available on an open source basis. And one of the benefits in some ways is, particularly from the UK and also Mexico side, there's a lot of information that's made available. And I mean, this is kind of reflected in some ways the strength of reflection we have for the UK and both Mexico in Edema is very strong. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Kevin Cooksey, can you do it in a minute?
I can do it in less than that. So here we go. I just wanted to say, Nancy, thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation. We are working on something similarly, not in our SBR, but at BLS, we are upgrading our data repository for public-facing data. And it was kind of a sanity check for me that you also found value in using the graph database, because similar to an SBR, our data dissemination has a lot of very complex data sets that we try to bring together and make available to the public. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks. I would love to get more information and maybe discuss with you offline about your developments as well.
That would be great.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. You're still invited to put even more into the chat if you like, and the organizers will present the chat to us and to the presenters, and all questions will be answered after the meeting. Just to mention that, let me make a try to wrap up in a minute. I was overwhelmed, I must say, in how much interest we have in international exchange, to learn from each other and to produce comparable international data. And I guess that is what we talked about now in this session. And we also have in the chat the beginning of cooperation or of continuing the exchange, even maybe some kind of meeting or exchange internationally on the tools we have learned about today. And I guess this is what also might be show the need to have further sessions on this topic of tools and methodology and international exchange on them. And I would be delighted, of course, to chair such a session in a future meeting. And I guess really, if we can do our part in preventing ourselves from inventing the wheel again and again and again, and then even worse, to put all these wheels on one vehicle and call it International Comparable Statistics on Globalization, then that Wiesbaden group, not only this session, but the Wiesbaden group would help a lot to improve international statistics. So with this, I would give back to the organizers. Next, what comes to us is a short break. And I ask for our hosts to announce to us when we shall meet again. I close this session. Thank you very much.
Sí, muchísimas gracias, Roland.
Thank you so much, Roland. Without a doubt, this was a very interesting session and everything according to the time frame. Thank you for that. So based on Roland's comment, I just wanted to say, as just like he mentioned, any questions that might be posted via our chat and that were not answered during the session, we are going to be compiling all of these and we will be sending them to the speakers. And afterwards, in the website of the event, at the end of every day's agenda, we will be uploading the answers corresponding to those questions. So if you've been to the website, you can see the answers to the questions from the first 2 days, from the 20th and the 21st of September, and we will do so today as well. So let's take a quick break and be back here in 12 minutes, 8:50 Mexico City time.
Enrico? Sì, sì, sento, è che... Quello che voglio dire è che io sarei a una conferenza in Messico da lunedì, il lunedì fino a venerdì, dalle 2 fino alle 5:30 io sto in conferenza, ho 2 minuti di tempo qua di 10 minuti di pausa. Quindi vedo le mail che arrivano, le telefonate che mi arrivano, quella che chiama per... Mi dice l'organizzatore ha disattivato il tuo audio, quindi scusami un secondo.
Muy bien, muchísimas gracias por...
All right, thank you so much for being back here on time. I would like to give the floor now to Natalia Dorontsova, who will be moderating session 7 on quality and statistical coverage. Go ahead.
Thank you, Hugo. Buenos dias, bonjour, buongiorno, guten Tag, good morning, good afternoon, dobry dzień, здравствуйте to everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. Just as I'm a little bit new in this session, I would like to say a few words about myself. I'm working for about 15 years already in the business register domain and the Federal Statistical Office with Fabio Tomasini, who I'm sure everybody knows. I worked with the use of the administrative data in the business register first, then I took responsibility for the management of the register, its updating and maintenance, as well as the quality control and monitoring. For the past 5-6 years, I have also been involved in the development and maintenance of our IT system, especially as a product owner. I had already the chance to participate in the Wiesbaden group several times, but as a presenter. It's my first time as a session leader, and I would like to thank the organizer of Wiesbaden group for this opportunity. I hope to be up to the task. I would like also to thank all the contributors for their participation and accepting to share their experiences and their challenges with us. The title of the session 7 is Quality and Statistical Coverage. Statistical business register is the backbone for the production of economic and business statistics. The quality of statistics produced based on the statistical business registers depends directly on the quality of the register. Is data quality good for business statistics? Is the quality of the sources sufficient? Do they cover all statistical units with the same degree of quality? Is business register overcovered or undercovered in terms of statistical units and needs? What could be done in order to improve the coverage of the register or to improve the quality of this coverage or of the story data? Those are the daily questions and concerns, I'm sure, of every business register manager. In this session, we will have 5 very interesting topics, giving us different experiences and perspective of the countries. We have 3 presentations today and 2 tomorrow. At the end of the first 3 presentations, there will be a room for the question. The first presentation assessing quality of units and their data will be given by Barry Koenen from Statistics Netherlands, who will share his experience on the development of a platform which is used to process, monitor, and distribute all administrative data, and where the user can have an access to all information about the processing and the quality of the data. Barry, I'm pleased to give a word to you. And while Barry preparing his presentation, I would like to say a few words about him. Barry is working at Statistical Netherlands for the last 13 years. He started with working on the Eurogroup Register project in collaboration with Eurostat. The last few years, he's working as an SBR production manager, where he is responsible for the daily SBR processing and SBR outputs. Recently, Barry's activity have been extended by the role of product owner of a project which is responsible for the new platform where the administrative data is going to be processed. This is a presentation we are about to listen to now. Barry, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. Yes, I would like to take you through in the next 10 minutes of the data platform which Natalia mentioned. What I will do is I will talk about the situation where we started from, the challenges which were proposed by them, the bigger picture where we are developing this new platform within the quality assessment approach that we have invented and are currently implementing, and then maybe take a small look in the future and see possible new developments which we're going to take on board. The current situation is that within our SBR department, we get a lot of administrative data coming from different sources. And in the history of time, they have been developed all from their own starting point. So they have different approaches, different softwares. The output is different. The quality approach is different. There are different measures for different people. So at some point, it was a very complex set of rules and output, and was very difficult to maintain. So a few years ago, we started thinking about a new approach, and we wanted to have a better quality assessment process. So, but to obtain that, we also had to redesign our complete processing of administrative data within our department. So it was our responsibility to have a very new look at how to find one process to fit all processing of administrative data, and in that, the quality assessment approach would be a part of it. So this is where we started from. It may be good to have a very high-level look at how we are organized in the Netherlands. So we have the data collection unit where all the data comes in, and then we have two divisions. One is responsible for the economic statistics, and one is for the social statistics. And the SBR department is mainly directed, of course, at the economic statistics, but we also get data from on people, which we then distribute for our departments within the social statistics. So that makes it for us, we have to find one approach which would not only fit for the economic data, but would also fit for the social statistics. So I will come back to this later, but this forms a huge challenge for us. What we have now is that, as I said, we have many different suppliers, the customs, the tax authority, the Chamber of Commerce, the Dutch Central Bank, and they all provide data to our department, which in itself, each has its own way of data processing. So there's no overlap, there's no one generic process for dealing with that. And in the end, we have a quality assessment, which is quite small. Each has their own quality assessment processes. And in the end, we get the statistical units and all the administrative units, which are related to that. But we also get the data, the administrative data on these units, which describe them. And then we have our users, which have one way of getting to our data and asking for the data, or they get the data sent to them. So this is really the old way of processing our data. We had to change that because we had to find something which was one generic process for all. But we don't live in a very easy world. So we have within Statistics Netherlands, there are a lot of different developments are going on. The challenges, the challenges which these, the maintenance is very high. Different processes ask for different procedures, different skills of people. We have a lot of manual action, so it's not automated in any way. We have not one overall quality assessment, so these are all different outcomes, different methodologies. There's a risk that at certain places within the complete Statistics Netherlands that we do the same things more than once. And we are quite inflexible. So the process which has been set up, they are not easy to update or to expand. When we look at what is happening within the Netherlands, there are a lot very large developments going on. The social statistics and also the economic statistics, they are in a very large program where they, with small steps, are going to redesign how they produce their statistics. We have data virtualization, which is being implemented. We have a new way of how to maintain our metadata. We have a classification service. All these things are happening at the same time that we are also implementing or designing our new administrative data platform. So these poses all challenges for our new process. And when we started this, we tried to look at what are the main goals for this new process. So we are aiming at one process for all. We are looking at one unified quality process. So the same steps that we do for dataset 1, we also do that for dataset 2. We want to be as automatic as possible. Maybe in the end have a fully automatic processing, but automate as many steps in the process as is possible. Share these quality results, so don't obtain them only within the SBR department, but be very transparent about what the quality of data is, so that the users can assess if it is already at the level that they are needed, and that they also know what quality has already been assessed by us, so they don't have to analyze these quality deficits once more. And then also be very flexible and quite speedy. So we need to be able to adjust these quality rules, and it needs to be very quick with the implementation. So these were the goals that we have set up when we were designing our new process. But so when you look at the vision, and I think that Natalia used this slide when she introduced what I was doing. But what we want to do is we want to have one platform to process and to monitor the data processing and share our data to our users, and that they know to which quality rules the data has been inspected and what the output of the data was. So this is what we try to implement in our new process. When we look at our processing, I will quickly guide you through this. So we have, as we always have, we have an input part, we have a throughput, and we have the output. So what we have in the Netherlands, we have this data collection department where all data comes in, and they provide, so all data comes in at this point, and they set the data at a certain file location where we can pick the data up. So this is fully automated. And already at this point, we have the first check. So the data collection department does checking on a higher level. From a technical level, we start at the input processing to see if the data is able to be processed. So say that you expect a CSV file and you get an ASCII file, then it will be rejected by the system. So we want to try to do the checks as early as possible in the system. When the data is technically ready to be processed, we already make a preliminary throughput and output situation, which is located in this part. And then it is up to us at the register department to assess if the quality is as we need it. I will get back to that later. So we have to support our quality assessment. We have made a web application which will give our domain experts, give them a visualization of all the quality assessments that we have done, and if there are any outliers in that. So if the data is correct, then he can accept it. But if there are any flaws in the data, then he can reject the data, and we need to go back to the supplier. So that going back to the supplier is then again through the data collection department, because they are the connecting part to our external suppliers. But if the data is accepted, then immediately the data will be stored in our own environment, but it will also be made available to our users. So in the complete processing, this is the only manual part which has to take place. He has to assess the data and then agree to share it with all our users. When he accepts the data, he can also provide certain types of argumentation why he has accepted the data, because sometimes there could be possible flaws in the data, but he can still decide to accept that. I will get also to that in a later process. And then when the data is available to our users will get a notification, and they also can they can retrieve the data, but they can also get to the same platform, and they can inspect the quality issues that we have already registered and which will be stored in our platform. So this will be always available for us internally, but also for our external users within Statistics Netherlands. So if you look at a little bit more in the quality assessment approach that we have within the Netherlands, at least this is my view a bit on it, we have 5 possible quality checks, and steps 2, 3, and 4, this is what we do in our SBR department. This is the delivery checks. These are done by the data collection part, and the statistical checks are done by our statistical users. And what we have divided is that the data quality assessment that we do, we have divided them into 3 parts. So we do the technical checks. Is it as expected, the data structure, for example, are all variables accounted for? We look into the data content. Is it as expected? You can imagine that, for example, the NACE code, is it for each unit available? But we also look at how the data is developing over time. So we compare the data which we have received over the years, or over the months, or over the quarterlies. In that way, we can see from in this visualization how the data has been developing, and we can also see if it's as we have expected it over the periods of time. So quickly get back in. So these technical checks, these are agreed with the supplier, because we have very close agreements with how they provide the data to us. What are the quality expectations that they are going to provide? So the record length, structure, file, data types, and all these things. These are done as early as on in the process. And the functional checks, these are aimed at the quality of the content of the data. Because as I stated, once we have accepted the data will be made available to all users, and each user at its own moment in time will start making use of that. So once it is available, it is very difficult to update quality flaws at that moment in time. So does every record have a tax number? If it should, we can also have hard errors and soft errors. And the hard errors, these, when they occur, then the data cannot be accepted. So if we state that every record should have a tax number, and we receive data without a tax number, then we reject the complete file. But we have to think about if these rules should really be hard errors or soft errors, because sometimes, for example, the percentage of a NACE code, if it's 50% of the NACE code is missing, or 1%, that makes it, we cannot define it as a hard error, not yet, not in the beginning, but maybe in time, this can be an automated setting that we will use to automatically assess if the quality is as we expected. And then again, this longitudinal checks as we so we want to compare it. So suppose that you get data in October of 2022. Then we're going to see how it has been, how it has developed within the year 2022, but also how it looked in October the previous year and the year before. And by doing this, we hope that we can see when how certain data is developing over the time. So maybe due to some reasons at the supplier, you get less and less data concerning a certain unit. And if we detect that, then we can speak to our suppliers what is happening there and how we can also within the next process, how we should treat that. Then looking at the future development.
Sorry, 1 minute left.
Yeah, this is the last slide. So when we look, we are currently implementing the process that I have just described, but we're also thinking about how to treat how to update our process in the future. And as I stated, a fully automated process is something that we really would like in the end. We have a production planning, and it would be very helpful if we could integrate that in our web platform, because then we can also monitor and say we have processed the data set when was needed. And the rule management, because now it's it's implemented by an agile team, but maybe there is a rule management system which would make it easier to maintain our rules over time. And also maybe joining different administrative data which has been processed to see if something which is visible in one data set could be explained by a different flow in another data set. I think, yeah, this was my last slide. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to present our new process. And
thank you, Barry, for this excellent opening of the session. It was very interesting presentation. I propose to go immediately to the second presentation. The second topic is a data quality indicator for European Statistical Business Register, which will show us a very interesting and concrete example of how create an indicator based on different quality dimensions, its weighting and settings. The presentation is given by Iliana Iskrenova and Isabelle Colette from Eurostat. Isabelle, I think, no, Iliana, sorry, you are starting the presentation, yeah? While you're preparing, I will just give some words about you and Isabelle. Iliana has more than 20 years experience in National Statistical Institute for Bulgaria. Currently, she is statistical officer in the business register team of Eurostat and works on the development and implementation of data quality program and the methodology for the European Statistical Business Register, comprising National Statistical Business Register and the Eurogroup Register. Isabelle, she's working in statistical area also for more than 20 years, especially in the data collection, analysis, and methodology. She was also involved in European projects, and she joined Eurostat in 2020 as a second national expert in the unit G1, and now she's working in this European SBR quality project and European profiling fields, technical and methodological level. Iliana, please.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Thank you for inviting us, and we have an opportunity to present our experience in data quality assessment and management. And what is the title of our presentation? In fact, we will present the data quality indicator for the European Statistical Business Registers. The point is not only for the EGR, but the national one, because how is organized our system. The European Statistical Business Registers include both national one and TGR. This is such an introduction before to go into the presentation. What exactly we will present there is kind of approach to set up a composite quality indicator for statistical business registers.
Sorry, Iliana, do you show your screen?
Yes.
Because I don't see anything. Anyone see something?
Maybe to ask the organizers to share, because from our side, it's I see it, and I don't know if other colleagues see the.
I don't see anything. I see that in the chat. No, nobody see it.
Okay, then to ask organizers to upload it, I will stop sharing and.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. So in our presentation today, we'll present our approach to set up a quality indicator for the European Statistical Business Registers. It's a composite quality indicator based on assessment of standard quality dimensions. Next slide, please. What is the content of the presentation? First, briefly, we'll outline the data quality program for the European Business Statistical Registers. As I mentioned, this program covers the National Business Register, the European one, and also the Eurogroup Register. In the second part, we'll explain how the national assessment of statistical business register is done by us and by Eurostat. And at the end, we'll focus on the composite quality indicator. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. The data quality program for the European Business Register was set up in 2016. The main objective of this program is to improve substantially the quality of European Business Register, make it possible to achieve its backbone role in producing European statistics. Data quality program is being implemented by following plan, do, act cycle annually. So following also our annual program, and it's implemented within a harmonized compliance monitoring and reporting framework in the area of European business and trade statistics. The four components are quality reporting, quality targets, assessment, and quality improvement. And the quality reporting, we conduct the standardized quality and metadata reporting, both for the national registers made by countries, and Eurostat make the quality reporting on Eurogroup register. The second component on quality targets specify the quality targets that enable the assessment of statistical business registers frames. And currently, Eurostat evaluates the national statistical business register by using a set of compliance and quality targets. Going to the next component, which is the quality assessment. It's conducted by Eurostat for all European business register and for the Eurogroup register annually. Quality assessed as part of monitoring of the compliance and quality under the European legal framework. One slide back, in fact. Okay, I'll try to speed up. The data quality program, part of it, no. In fact, you have to go to, yes, keep this, and I'll go to the quality assessment. Thank you very much. So Eurostat annually assesses the quality of national registers, and by using a set of quality and compliance quality targets. The compliance targets, as I already mentioned, derive from the European legislation, and also what we have as additional quality targets. They include some additional targets which are based on user needs and that are not required, let's say, by regulation, but they are very important to our users, and the set of those quality targets, for example, we could say these are optional variables listed in our legal basis. Although the data quality program targets which are defined in the program have been specified under the European framework for the European Statistical Business Registers, the quality assessment relies on the assessment of the standard quality dimensions. Such standard quality dimensions, punctuality, completeness, accuracy, also coherence and comparability. By talking on evaluation and also assessment of quality, it's important to note that the evaluation of quality from one side is a way of quality dimension is measured, and this measurement could be done either quantitative or qualitative. So the evaluation of quality is done for each of the selected standard quality dimension that I already mentioned: punctuality, completeness, accuracy, coherence, because we believe that those main quality dimensions are of importance for the statistical business registers. Talking on the assessment of quality, which is done on annual basis under the data quality program, the evaluation process provides a figure for each quality dimension. However, to assess the quality, it's also necessary to have a scale for each quality dimension that I already mentioned, and this scale have to include also classes and their respective thresholds. It is possible to monitor each quality dimension individually, but however, we can also set up a composite quality indicator that somehow gather the assessment of all selected quality dimensions and make such a one at first glance looking at this composite indicator to understand what is the level of at the current moment. So talking on this for the weighting and more details on the indicator, I could give the floor to Isabel, and he will explain more practically how the quality dimensions are assessed.
Thank you, Eliana, for the floor, and Natalia for the nice introduction. So let's move on the next slide, if you please. I will pick up an example of one of the quality dimensions that we select, punctuality, which everybody knows is very important for Eurostat. Actually, the first step is the evaluation. The evaluation is to set up a punctuality function, which is actually the gap between the actual delivery of the national report and the deadline foreseen in the data quality program. The second step is the assessment. So assess, it's basically to answer to the question, but what does it mean? 1, 2, 3, or 10 days of delay of the delivery. So to do that, you have to set up classes with appropriate threshold. So it can be quite rough with 2 classes. So one, it's the data are delivered on time, and the other, it's in red, it's not. Or it can be more progressive by build up several classes, such 4 classes, with the threshold. The threshold, it means the requirement level. So let's say in the case of 4 classes, the red classes, so to speak, is actually 30 days. If I move this threshold to 15 days, the requirement level will be higher. Next slide, please. But what is very important before, it's to look at the former distribution of this punctuality function, who is really helpful to set up the class. Next slide, please. When you have or do all the setting for the quality, you have select all your quality dimension that is required according to your need. We do that as an example for punctuality, already mentioned, but also for completeness, which is basically based on the completeness of the mandatory variable that a national BR should provide. Accuracy, if the member state took the necessary measure to avoid any bias in the BR, but also coherence, both internal coherence of the BR itself, or external coherence, because it has already mentioned in the previous presentation, BR are currently used as a data sources. So the data in the BR should be coherent in other business domain. But here it's less strict, so to speak. So it's more measuring the coherence and the gap using a range. Next slide, please. So when you have to do all that, build up a composite indicator is quite straightforward. We use a simple score, which is really easy to set up. You just have for each quality dimension to decide a weight. Here the sum of the weight is 100. 100 will be the full score. And of course, for each quality dimension, according to your assessment, you have to give the point. So as an example, if it's completely satisfactory, it's the full point, the full weight. If it's in the acceptable classes, it will be depend on the evaluation, and maybe the score will be 0 if it's not satisfactory. And after, you just have to add up the number. And here again, you have to go to these assessments, namely is building classes. Next slide, please. The key point that you have to be aware, it's assessment as composite indicator are highly affected by what we call threshold effect. So move the threshold at least for 1 unit can drastically impact the result of your assessment. That is why it should be tested before. But when it has been tested, the setting should be rather stable, so you will be able to monitor the quality of the BR over the time. And I will say you do not change the rule in the middle of the river. But at last but not least, a composite indicator or whatever function you choose, a simple score or more complex one, it's basically an average, who is a really nice indicator. You can test it very nicely, but the weak point of the average, it overrides the distribution. So if you just have a look on the composite indicator, maybe you will miss something. And so that will be it. I would like at the conclusion to insist on the necessary monitoring of the quality of the National Statistical Business Register, specifically for Eurostat. As it was already mentioned in the previous session, member state exchange microdata through the EGR. So each of them should be aware of the quality of the data they received. And it has also been mentioned by Natalia. We also use this backbone image for the BR. And backbone, it's not exactly the first thing that you see. However, the lack of backbone, it's definitely something that you will notice immediately. So thank you for your attention, and time's up. I think we are very punctual.
Thank you, Isabel and Diana. Yeah, it was on time. And thank you for this very clear and practical example of the use and implementation of the indicator system. It sounds very simple listen to you, but I'm sure that it's not the case. The third and last presentation for today is improving the quality and coverage of the finance unit on the ABS business register. Andrew Naughton from Australian Bureau of Statistics will give us the Australian approach to use more administrative and survey data together with business register in order to increase the quality and the coverage of the international sector common frame. Andrew is a senior statistical analyst who has been working in all areas of the ABS business register for 17 years. And he is a lead manager developing the institutional sector common frame for the past 4 years. Andrew, go ahead. You have 15 minutes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you. I'm really happy to be invited to give this presentation. Now, can you see my presentation up on the screen?
Yes, yes.
Oh, thank you very much. I've been watching the Wiesbaden group for the past 15 years or so from a distance, so to speak. So I consider this a great honour to be able to be given this opportunity. What I'll be doing is outlining how we've improved the quality of the ABS business register and the coverage of finance units on the register. The topics, I'll go through this fairly briefly because I think you know basically how our register is structured, and that's the first part I'll talk about. I'll also go into where our data comes from. I'll go into the reasons why we've decided to develop an institutional sector common frame and based it upon a spine model and the data that we've brought in to supplement what we've got on the business register already. And I'll explain and outline what the impacts and quality improvements have been. I think you all basically know how the ABS business register is more or less structured. It's used mainly, or has been used, as a source of truth for producing coherent and consistent survey frames for business-related collections, which are our inputs to the national accounts and business demography. And basically, the register contains legal entities, which in Australia are sourced from the Australian Business Register, managed by the Taxation Office, and these are basically considered businesses, and conveniently they are institutional units. And the register comprises of two populations, a non-profile population and the profile population. And the profile population is basically has been set up, covers about 1% of businesses on the register. And it's been set up so we can, profilers can describe those businesses and structure them according to the ABS economic units model. And the units model is outlined there on this slide. And probably the most important feature of it for this presentation is that it's a fairly standard units model, but with an enterprise group and a type of activity unit, which is similar to the COW or kind of activity unit. But the most important feature of that diagram is probably the institutional sector unit. And that's been developed by the ABS so we can provide an institutional view of businesses and hence the register and hence the economy. The institutional units are derived units basically, which comprise of all legal entities within an enterprise group that are classified to the same institutional sector. The data that the register obtains from the Australian Taxation Office is we get that on a monthly basis, and about 99% of our units on the register, there's very simple legal entities represented by these Australian business numbers, and in addition to that, we have large businesses, complex businesses, which, as I alluded to before, are structured according to the ABS units model via clerical profiling by ABS profilers. Now, and that profiling population is updated on a daily basis. So what that means is we've got a fairly dynamic business register, which we particularly discovered last year during the COVID period. And what we do is we take a quarterly snapshot called the production common frame. And from that, we produce around 20 different business survey frames. And until recently, though, it's been challenging to provide an institutional sector view of the economy and the register. So we've developed an institutional sector common frame, and we've based this upon a business spine model, which I'll go into in a minute, and which I'll go into now, actually. Basically, this slide represents the model that we've used, and we've developed the institutional sector common frame on this. The spine is simply a linkage table which links a number of data sets together, and we integrate these data sets using the linkage table, which contains relationships between legal entities or ABNs and the economic units model. And from that, the output that we get are the two different common frames. So what we get is an institutional sector common frame, and we also get the production-based common frame. From those, we produce the appropriate survey frames that we need, whether they be institutional for finance collections or production-based for, say, the annual economic activity survey. Now, why did the ABS go down this track to produce this institutional sector common frame and improve the coverage of finance units on the ABS business register? It was mainly to improve the coherence between source collections within the Australian national accounts, also to increase the efficiency of sector profiling and frame creation. So rather than having a business survey area create their own frames, we have those finance survey areas. We have those finance survey frames produced by the register. We also wanted to improve the coverage and integration across all statistical programs. And also, we wanted to use data across production and institutional sector views of the economy. Now we can actually look at that from the register point of view, but even look at enterprise groups and see an institutional sector view, not just a production-based view. We also wanted to gain an understanding of the relationships between the institutional and business views, and collections, in fact, for national accounts purposes. Now, what we've done to improve the coverage and quality and pick up these finance units on the Australian Business Register, I should explain something. On the register, there's around about, in terms of legal entities, there's around about 2.7 million legal entities at the moment. Now, all the finance units in the Australian economy are there, but the issue has been, up until recently, without these new data sources, we haven't been able to sector code and identify these finance units accurately. So what we've done is that we've introduced these new data sources, which I'll go through in a second, and to identify the units and also sector code them quite precisely. So what we've done is that we've obtained data from the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority on regulated financial entities such as life insurance finance companies and banks and so on. We've obtained data from the Australian Securities and Investments Commission to identify and classify retail managed funds. In addition to that, we've obtained business income tax data from the tax office and applied that through an algorithm to identify and sector classify managed funds and trusts. In addition to that, what we've created yet another algorithm to identify and sector code unlisted wholesale trusts, which are particularly problematic in identifying in Australia, as they're not necessarily listed. Well, they're not listed on the stock exchange, and they're not regulated by the Securities and Investments Commission. Now, what we've fundamentally done, this is the institutional sector common frame using the business spine. What we've done is that we've brought in data from the Australian Business Register and ATO, that's the monthly data coming in. We've got profile data coming in, and the other data extracts that we get are the business income tax data and the data sets the new data sets I just mentioned before. We've also got access to the edited data holdings of the International Investment and Financial Information Survey areas within the ABS, and we combine all that into the spine, and the output we get basically the institutional sector common frame, which is a listing of all the institutional sector units in the economy, plus ABNs, which have a finance activity. And we're able to produce a number of extracts, not just the IS common frame, but any extract that may be relevant to any user from that. In terms of the sort of maintenance process that we have with the institutional sector common frame, on the left-hand side, you'll see the new data sources that I mentioned earlier. We've got feedback coming from international investment and the survey of financial information. We've got the income tax data coming in. Now, all that can lead to a couple of things. It can lead to changes in the industry classification per unit. If there's a change, in some cases, if there's a change in the finance sector classification of a unit, it could change their industry classification. And they go through an algorithm. The output produced from that is not only the listing, not only the IS common frame listing itself, but also a listing for profilers to alert them as to changes that have happened in the previous quarter. So the most interesting part has been probably the impacts of the quality improvements. And there's been several, and we had a couple of unexpected things happen. There's been a significant improvement in the sector coding on the business register. It's affected about 3.4% of ABNs, so it's in the hundreds of thousands. There's been actually a significant improvement with the reclassification of managed investment schemes from trusts from the household sector and other financial intermediaries into non-financial investment funds and non-money market funds. So the previous sector coding that we had prior to this initiative wasn't all that accurate, so we've improved the accuracy of that. The second set of impacts has been on surveys. For the International Investment Survey, we found that there were significant changes in the movements of units between institutional sectors, but there were no significant changes in the levels of their time series. So that was interesting and good news in a sense. For the production-based collections, such as the quarterly business indicators selection and labour surveys, and the economic activity survey, which is an annual collection, there's changes in industry classifications, but there was improvements coming out of that. The largest impact we've found will be on the survey of financial information, which is currently onboarding to the ABS Business Register. And we expect the coverage of that will increase significantly. So what are the future further improvements and future steps? Well, as I said, completing the onboarding of the financial information survey. That survey includes data on managed funds, investment schemes, and it also includes important data on investment managers, which they're major inputs into the finance and wealth accounts for the national accounts. So that's a critical collection. So those improvements will be welcomed. What we're also doing is introducing a couple more data sets to improve the sector coding of wholesale trusts, identifying demand, improving the sector coding. We're also exploring the options to replace the direct collection of data from finance groups using the administrative data that we're now collecting from those new data sources. And we're also thinking of linking finance sector data to the ABS-BR spine to basically enable data confrontation and statistical solutions via data integration. Now that's all I was going to say, and I'll certainly welcome any comments or any questions, and I'm more than happy to follow up with any further details if you're interested.
Thank you, Andrew, for this very interesting and problematic that you address. Now, I think we are a little bit late, but we have still 13 minutes time. I open the floor for the discussion. You can raise your hand or put your question on the chat. I saw already some discussion on the chat during presentation, but maybe if someone would like to intervene, just raise your hand. Is there some Fabio Tomasini? He is back.
Always back.
Fabio.
Thank you for the presentation. Very interesting, and I think this matter of quality is everywhere. Still a very, very big issue. And I have a question for Barry and for Iliana, especially about the publication of data or the information. Barry, you said that you want to make available the result. For me, one question is what is the purpose? Do you mean that the provider should react and have a kind of improvement program also. So in this way, this publication have a meaning to really assess the quality and to get them also to improve their providing information. And for Iliana, the other question is we know that we have the quality assessment that are provided to each national institute. It is also the meaning that we will provide publicly. I mean, in order to have a kind of feature that explain how is the situation in all the system, or this will be in the future something that will be always a kind of bilateral discussion about the quality. Voila.
Thank you, Fabien. Who would like to start? Barry? It was first question for you.
Yeah, no problem. The publication of the quality results is the first aim that we have is an internal Statistics Netherlands. So we want to publish the quality results in order to prevent that later on in the statistical process, our users detect some quality flaws which have already been inspected at the business register department. So we want to prevent double work with that, but also a secondary motivation is to use it in communication with our suppliers. So if we see certain quality flaws over time, we could use these reports that we have to discuss with them. But these are not openly available for all our suppliers on, let's say, our company website. So it's an internal distribution of quality reports. So I hope that is clear.
Thank you, Barry. Iliana, do you want to?
Yes, thank you very much, Natalia, and also thank you very much for the question that we have. As all European countries know, we make this national assessment. In fact, the results are provided only to countries, and I could say use internally for the European statistical systems, and our statistical users are aware from other statistical domains what is the quality of national business registers, but we don't plan to publish such information on our website. But talking about our proposal and approaches for the composite quality indicator, for sure, we'll use this indicator and the EBS compliance and quality monitoring in the future, such as indication, but it will again be reported on the European level, just internally for the European business statistics domains. We will not plan to publish such information, but what is useful for our users that the assessment is done based on the national quality reports that countries provide to us, so there is no confidential information, and maybe in the near future we'll start publishing the national quality, the national metadata reports, because also will be some kind of start from our side to open what is happening in the statistical business register domain. So this is, but otherwise, directly to the question of Fabio, we don't plan to publish the quality indicator results. Will be internally used. Thank you.
Thank you, Iliana. Is there some other question? Maybe I have also a question to Isabel and Iliana about indicator system. Yeah, we've seen already these indicators about we receive this information, this evaluation about national register. We can see acceptable or fully compliant. Just how many indicators do you use? You showed us only a subset, I think, of your work, but how many did you have? Should we have like a a maximum number of indicators, or there is no maximum number? What do you think? Thank you.
Talking about numbers of those quality indicators, currently what we focus on the completeness, this the main quality dimension, because it's very important for us to know what is the quality of this site, the completeness of data sets provided to us, also to EGR and in the National Quality Report. Also, we make part of this quality assessment, cross-check on the consistency of data, also what are in the business demography and in our business. Nevertheless, we have the aggregated data, but it's very important information. So I could say we rely also on this quality dimension on the accuracy, and that's why we put even in the document and in our presentation those 4 main standard quality dimensions, because also for us is of great importance the accuracy and reliability of data provided by national statistical business registers. The coherence and comparability I already mentioned. So those are the 4 main quality dimensions on which we focus and make our assessment. Also, you receive in the national reports the assessment results. And maybe Isabel would like something to complement on this, on the national quality assessment. But the idea for the composite quality indicator, in fact, come to us recently, because we need in the future set a composite indicator in order to have on glance for all countries what is the situation. And for sure, we introduce it and in the near future and EBS compliance monitoring. Thank you, Isabel.
I just would like to add a few words. Actually, yes, actually the exercise is the compliance exercise based on targets, but behind the targets, actually you have actual quality dimensions. So every quality dimension, it's closely monitored in that way. For the selection of the quality dimension, actually, you cannot say that one quality dimension is more important than another, but it's really linked to the process, and as early mentioned by Eliana, completeness, it's one of the main targets and have the main weight in your process.
This answer. Agne would like to take a floor. Agne, please.
Thank you. Sorry, I was not able to find where to raise my hand, so I'm not familiar with Zoom. I'm from Eurostat. I'm responsible of the EGR team, and I have a question to Barry. I saw in your presentation you have different sources that you are using for your national business registers, and I did not find out, did not see EGR.
Not 100% sure. We at the moment we don't use the EGR as an input for the business register. So we link it to our output to indicate whether a certain national enterprise group is linked to a global enterprise group. But at this moment, I don't think that we have any plans of using the EGR as a source for the SBR. But I'm not sure if my colleague Rico is still online, but he is more an expert because he is working very thoroughly with the EGR data in relation to our business register. So I'm not sure if Rico can add something to that, but I am not aware of any plans of using it as a source.
Thank you, Barry. Rico, do you want to intervene?
Yes, I can add to it. I think Barry is right in this point of view. We have our own sources for our relationships that we have integrated in a separate register, therefore, for cross-border relationships, and that's pure to make the link with the EGR. So everything we can deliver to the EGR is very good. Then, if the EGR has done its work very perfect, then we can use the information what's the frames from the EGR, and we can save this and distribute this within our bureau. So this is the idea. So not using the only coordinated information is in the EGR. So it's not in our business register. The business register only stores the information what's in our private sources or administrative sources. So barriers, right?
Thank you for this this intervention. I think we are running out of time. It's we have only 40 seconds left. Do you have is there a last question that someone would like to raise? If not, I would like to conclude that today we have had some very good and concrete examples of the effort made by the countries to go further and further in order to offer the users not only better quality of the data, but also more complete data as soon as possible to better the data which corresponds better to the user needs, and that it's qualified with additional information. It's I found it very interesting and enthusiastic with this all this project, and yeah, I think thank you again all participants for this presentation, and I will give back the word to Hugo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia, and thank you for the speakers too. Natalia, and thank you very much to the speakers too. Estamos terminando la sesión del día de hoy. Hoy terminamos un poco antes que las dos sesiones.
We're finishing today's session. We're finishing at 10 a.m. today in accordance to today's agenda. Let me remind you that tomorrow's session, just like all the others, will start at 7 a.m. Mexico City time. You can be online 15 minutes ahead of the hour. So I thank you so much. Have a good day, a good evening, a good afternoon, and a good evening. I thank all of you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.